Hello guys, welcome back to the channel. So today we need to talk about the Indiana Fever because the roster is officially complete. And honestly, I have mixed feelings. I genuinely do. Because when you look at this team from top to bottom, there are parts of this roster that absolutely scream championship contender. But then you look at the bottom half of the roster and it feels like the front office completely lost the plot. And I'm not even exaggerating when I say this. I don't know if the Indiana Fever even properly used their final developmental slot. It's honestly that bizarre. The Fever posted the entire squad by jersey numbers, did the big reveal, the whole social media rollout, and people immediately started noticing something weird. There's basically no real developmental depth here. Now, yes, technically, teams do not have to use developmental players. They don't. That's within the rules. But most smart organizations at least attempt to build some kind of long-term pipeline. The Fever? It feels like they're operating completely year to year. But let's start with the obvious positives, because there are a lot of them. Kelsey Mitchell is still one of the best shooting guards in basketball. I don't care what anyone says. She is one of the purest scorers in the WNBA, period. Her ability to create offense is elite. Her shot creation is elite. And honestly, if things go right this season, she could absolutely make another all-WNBA team. The scary thing for opposing teams is that Kelsey Mitchell is no longer carrying a disaster roster anymore. Last year, there were stretches where defenses could completely load up on Caitlin Clark and Kelsey Mitchell because Indiana simply didn't have enough reliable players around them. That's not really the case anymore. And speaking of that, Myisha Hines-Allen on her contract is honestly a bargain. She really is. Now, don't get me wrong, Myisha Hines-Allen can absolutely frustrate you. She can have possessions where she looks like an all-star, and then immediately follow that up with a possession where she looks completely out of control. That's just part of the experience with her. But the difference now is that the Fever actually have options. They finally have depth. If Myisha Hines-Allen starts doing too much offensively or starts forcing things, the Fever can sit her down for stretches. The Dallas Wings last year didn't really have that luxury in certain situations. Indiana does. And honestly, Myisha Hines-Allen reminds me a lot of Natasha Howard in terms of variability. Natasha Howard will give you stretches where she looks phenomenal. Then she'll give you stretches where she looks completely unplayable. It's basketball roulette sometimes. One possession, you're seeing elite defensive instincts and veteran IQ. The next possession, you're seeing a completely avoidable turnover. That's just reality. Then we move to Raven Johnson, and I've got to say this. Raven Johnson might quietly become one of the steals of this entire draft class. Seriously. At first, I wasn't fully convinced because I kept thinking about Tyasha Harris and what Indiana maybe could have prioritized differently. But the more I watch Raven Johnson, the more I understand it. She's the ultimate glue player. Every good team needs players like that. She's not going to dominate headlines every night. She's not going to average 25 points, but she does all the little things winning teams need. Defensive energy, connective passing, transition awareness, hustle plays, smart rotations. Raven Johnson brings those things consistently. And if you can get a player at number 10 in the draft who immediately pushes for rotation minutes on a contender, that's incredible value. Then we get to Aaliyah Boston, and look, people are still somehow underrating Aaliyah Boston because Caitlin Clark gets most of the media attention. But Aaliyah Boston is legitimately one of the best players in the entire league already. If you classify Aja Wilson primarily as a power forward, Aaliyah Boston is the best center in the WNBA. If you classify Aja Wilson as a center, then Aaliyah Boston is the second best center in the league. Either way, she's elite. Her footwork is elite, her touch around the rim is elite, her defensive IQ is elite. And honestly, I think there's a real possibility Aaliyah Boston becomes a top 5 player in the entire WNBA this season. That's not even a hot take anymore. Then you've got Sophie Cunningham, who honestly fits this roster perfectly. She's a shooter, she competes defensively, she spaces the floor, and she understands her role. Every championship-level team needs connective players who don't overcomplicate things, and Sophie Cunningham absolutely gives Indiana that. Now we have to talk about Lexi Hull, because this is where conversations get weird online. People constantly attack Lexi Hull's shooting percentages without understanding what kind of shooter she actually is. Lexi Hull is one of the streakiest shooters in the league. She will genuinely go 10 games looking like one of the best three-point shooters in basketball, and then she'll go another 10 games barely hitting anything. That's just who she is. But the one thing nobody can question is the effort. Lexi Hull plays hard every night. The energy is real, the hustle is real. She crashes the floor, fights for loose balls, defends hard, and gives maximum effort constantly. And honestly, effort matters on a team with championship aspirations.
Now, unfortunately, we have to talk about Damiris Dantas. I genuinely do not understand why Damiris Dantas still has a guaranteed spot on this roster. I don't get it. This is a player who was basically unplayable during stretches of the 2024 playoffs. Defensively, it was rough, really rough. And then the front office made the decision to protect her over Temi Fagbenle, which already looked questionable at the time. Now it looks even worse, because Temi Fagbenle became an important contributor elsewhere, while Damiris Dantas struggled badly. And yes, Damiris Dantas technically has shooting ability, theoretically, hypothetically. But the actual production last season simply wasn't there. You keep waiting for Brazil Dantas to show up, the version of her that looks skilled offensively and stretches the floor consistently, but it rarely actually happens. Now sure, she has moments. She has the occasional Dirk-style fadeaway. She'll occasionally hit a big shot. But overall, it's hard to justify the roster spot based on last season's production. Then there's Justine Pissott. And look, I'm not trying to be mean here, but realistically, she's probably not playing meaningful basketball this season unless multiple injuries happen. She feels like pure emergency depth right now. Which brings me to another weird organizational decision. According to Chloe Peterson and multiple reports surrounding the team, Indiana apparently has very little interest in aggressively using developmental players. That's strange to me, because other franchises are clearly prioritizing development pipelines now. Look at the Mercury situation. Sammy Whitcomb and other veteran additions still exist alongside pathways for younger players to compete for opportunities. Indiana doesn't really seem interested in that structure right now. Instead, what it feels like the Fever plan to do is simply wait for hardship situations if injuries happen. And yes, technically that strategy worked at times last year. But the WNBA is expanding. More teams means more roster spots. More roster spots means fewer quality free agents sitting around waiting for emergency hardship calls. That matters. Now let's talk about KK Timpson, because she genuinely surprised me in preseason. I watched her overseas, I watched multiple games, and honestly, at times she looked completely lost offensively. The awareness level was rough. But during preseason, she looked significantly more comfortable. The athleticism was obvious, the energy was obvious, and most importantly, she didn't look overwhelmed anymore. Honestly, if Mo Billings misses time early in the season, I wouldn't even be shocked if KK Timpson starts getting legitimate rotational consideration immediately. And speaking of Mo Billings, the assignment is simple. Rebound, set screens, make layups. That's it. Nobody is asking Mo Billings to become a superstar. Nobody is asking for 20 points per game. Just do the dirty work consistently. If you occasionally hit a three, great. If you block shots, even better. Just stop making reckless defensive mistakes like the Dallas game sequence where everything turned chaotic. And then, finally, Shatori Walker-Kimbrough. I genuinely don't understand this roster spot. Now, to be fair, I don't think Shatori Walker-Kimbrough is a terrible player. I actually think she can still create offense better than some people realize. She has a decent pull-up game, she can occasionally generate her own shot, but the fit makes no sense. She's undersized, the defense isn't great, the shooting is inconsistent, and Indiana already has guards. What they needed more was size, wing depth, or another reliable frontcourt option. And honestly, if Indiana never signed Shatori Walker-Kimbrough, I'm not convinced another team was rushing to offer a major role, especially after averaging around 1 point per game in Atlanta, which becomes even more confusing when you remember that Micah Hines-Allen, someone who actually contributed for Atlanta, was available. That's the frustrating part with this front office sometimes. They make brilliant moves and then immediately follow them up with decisions that leave everybody confused. Because at the top of this roster, this team is dangerous. Caitlin Clark is the best guard in the WNBA. Kelsey Mitchell is elite offensively. Aaliyah Boston is elite on both ends. Sophie Cunningham fits perfectly. Lexi Hull brings energy. Raven Johnson has major upside. Micah Hines-Allen gives them versatility. That top 7? Championship caliber. Legitimately championship caliber. But once you get beyond that core rotation, things start getting shaky very quickly. The depth becomes questionable, the developmental structure becomes questionable, and some of these roster decisions honestly feel completely unnecessary. So yeah, that's the Indiana Fever roster. A team with championship-level talent at the top, and a bottom half of the roster that still feels like the Portland Fire. Okay, tell me what you think. Don't forget to like and subscribe.